Oh yeah. Oh yeah. On this run, I'm going to unpack 5 ways to describe that the subconscious is not a mind. So if you're new to my content, you may want to listen to something else, because it's all based on the premise, not the premise, the fact that we have 100 billion neurons, 20 billion are in the prefrontal cortex, which didn't really develop until after age 20, until around age 27. But 100 billion neurons, each connected to 1,000 to 10,000 other neurons. And the reason that's significant is because that's where your cognitive processing is. So people think that it's been called the mind for centuries. So people think it's a mind, and it makes it very difficult for them to process. So I have people who know about the neurons, they can explain it, but they have trouble internalizing it, and it's because it's hard to think of, even the word think, but it's hard to process that the neurons is really what we have been interpreting as thought. So again, my content explains that, but anyway, so here's the deal. I'm going to start with things that are physical, because the point is that the cognitive processing is physiological. Habits don't live in the mind, they live in the network of neurons. The network of neurons, each neuron connected to, as I said, 10,000, up to 10,000 other neurons, connected together, communicate with each other with synapses. What goes through the neurons is energy. So the energy is not physiological, but the neurons are, as is the synapses. And when you have myelin and good synapses, which is formed by synaptogenesis, you have a habit. Habits are the path of least resistance. So when you have an impulse, it's traveling along a neural pathway. If there's a neural pathway that has less resistance, it's going to take that one, and that becomes a habit. So that's the foundation. Now, as you think about neural pathways, all your impulses, all your thoughts, everything goes through the network of neurons, whether it's what you think of as mental, and I'll use mental versus cognitive. Cognitive is the physiological part. Thinking is real thought. There is real thought in the conscious mind, and that's energy, and the network of neurons will pass, or they transition the signal from an energy signal to something the conscious mind can perceive, and that's the basis of what I'll be talking about, because that gets passed on as a sensation. It could be a picture, it could be a feeling, it could be some kind of a memory that gets triggered. The point is, the conscious mind doesn't think in the same pattern as the neural pathways. The neural pathways is energy, conscious mind is thought. Now, the transition from one to the other is where the magic happens. Once you fully internalize that the network of neurons is processing associations which get passed on as thought, and then that thought becomes what you think is true. But it's habitual, and once you get that, you can't unsee it. So I see the whole world as network of neurons, and it aligns with quantum physics versus Newtonian physics. Now, what's interesting is that, and here's the setup for the 5. Hope I have enough time in this run. I used up a lot on that preamble, but here's the deal. You have associations, trillions of associations, right? Because they're all the connections of the neural pathways, they're all connected and stuff. But excitement and energy have a similar signature pattern in the network of neurons. So if you're excited about something, it's very easy for neural pathways that have associations related to anxiety it's very easy for them to be activated. And if you think about choking in athletics, now I'm not a neuroscientist. I learn from them and I work to put things in layman terms. If you think about choking in sports, one of the ways you could consider that is if a person chokes, it's usually when the game is when the score is close, it's near the end, they have a chance of winning. They get excited about winning, and a simple choke could be that the anxiety of a neural pathway that's similar gets triggered, and now you have anxiety. And then once it's triggered, you have associations, and now you have anxious associations triggering as opposed to the excitement ones. So this is why back in the 80s, there are all these books that you had to kind of be dissociated. You can't be thinking about the game. All this stuff, they were trying to figure it out, but it was all associations. They didn't realize the subconscious was the mind. This is new within the last 20 years that neuroscientists started talking about it as other than a mind, and it's still not really mainstream. Now, take that, think about this. So that tells you that your neurons can cross circuit there. If you ever watch a Grand Prix race and they put the camera on the steering wheel, let me get past these people on your left. If you put the camera on the steering wheel, what you'll see is that their hands are moving in millisecond speed. They're constantly adjusting. Now, clearly, then that driver's not thinking. And I've done race car driving and motorcycle racing and stuff. That driver's not thinking. They're feeling the traction. Because coming out of a turn, when you're racing at that speed, your tire's constantly sliding slightly. It's more like tearing, not sliding. And you don't want it to slide. So those hand movements, they're coming out of a turn, they're on the gas, they're constantly adjusting their hands so that they don't slide. The significance of that is they feel it. So there is a direct connection from the feeling it to the input of the hands. And of course they practice driving all the time, and so it gets second nature. But there you go, it's a physiological sensation, but it's the associations. They know what it feels like when they're starting to lose traction. They adjust by adjusting the steering wheel. This is what traction control does. It backs off on the fuel air mixture just slightly, or retards the spark just slightly, to be able to slow the engine down, slow the power down to the wheels. Now, that's the second one. The third one is to start connecting the dots between physiology and conversation. Everybody's been in a conversation with somebody, and they could tell the moment. I'm not talking the second, I'm talking the moment. The split, the less than 1/10 of a second, when the person got triggered. I used to call it telling tension. You can see the moment when telling tension happened. You can see the moment when telling tension happened, and at that moment, they're not thinking. There was a direct connection from the word you said to the impulse that shifted the muscles on their face. Now, when those muscles on their face shifted, they're called micro expressions. You know the impulse was felt. But that happens in milliseconds. The conscious mind has reaction time of a half second. So all that's going on before the conscious mind even picks up on it. So that set of dots is that you can have a word, which is, think of it as mental vocabulary, a word that triggers a response. And if you look at those videos when people are getting triggered, you'll see it happen instantaneously. A person gets triggered, and they're often running inside before their conscious mind gets rational. And that's why it's so hard that once a person is triggered, like those Karen videos where they just keep like escalating, it's basically them reacting to their own reactions. Their own reactions become their own stimulus response. So the stimulus response is no longer looking to the outside, which is why you can have a rational conversation and it doesn't do any good. So that's the third one. Now the fourth one